What's up, Commanders? Dimebot here. It is finally here, the Gutamaya Corsair, the newest medium ship. Now, we've had the specialty ships in the Type 8, the Mandalay, etc. Now comes the multi-role. Now, TLDR for the video, the Corsair is a pretty serviceable ship. It is a jack-of-all-trades, master of none. What do I mean by that? Well, let's dive in a little deeper, starting out with how you get it. It is not currently available in-game for purchase. However, you can look at the shipyard once you own it and see that it will cost 79 million credits, so not a cheap ship, but not super expensive either. If you want to get your hands on it, you will need to shell out ARCs. Now, you can get your hands on the regular version for 16,250 ARCs, or you can shell out for the stellar version for 33,000. In terms of real money, US dollars, this is going to be between $12.99 and $37.99 to buy the ARCs, because FDev does not sell the exact required amount of the transaction microcurrency ARCs that you need to get one or the other bundles. That's just how microtransactions work, I guess. So what are the differences between the regular and the stellar? Well, actually pretty significant with this particular ship. Starting out with the hardpoints, you have 3 large and 3 medium hardpoints. The Corsair Standard is going to come with 2 1F pulse lasers in the medium slot. By contrast, the Corsair Stellar is going to come with 1 large 3E pulse laser, 2 large 3C multi-cannons, 2 medium 2F pulse lasers, and 1 medium 2F multi-cannon, so you are looking at 2 guns versus 4 guns. Core internals is where we really see some big differences. First off, on the regular Corsair, you have lightweight alloy. The Stellar has military-grade composite. Then for your power plant on the Standard, you have a 70 power plant, 70 thrusters, and a 70 power distributor. All of those are going to be 7A on the Stellar. Your frameshift drive is a 5E SCO on the Standard. It is a 5A SCO on the Stellar. Life support goes from 4E to 4D between Standard and Stellar. Sensors go from 6E to 6D between the Standard and the Stellar. And then you move on to your utility mounts and your internals. When it comes to utility mounts, the Corsair Standard comes with nothing. The Corsair Stellar, on the other hand, comes with a heat sink launcher, shield booster, point defense turret, and a kill warrant scanner. And it only gets more interesting from there. Moving on to the optionals, the Corsair Standard comes with a 5E cargo rack, a 5E shield generator, 4E cargo rack, Super Cruise Assist, advanced docking computer, and advanced planetary approach. When you jump up to the Stellar, you are going to get a 6C bi-weave shield generator, 2 6E 64-ton cargo racks, a 32-ton cargo rack, a 5A fuel scoop, 5D hull reinforcement package, 4D module reinforcement package, a 3C operations limpet controller, a planetary vehicle hangar, a detailed surface scanner, and of course you're going to get the advanced planetary approach suite. There's very significant differences between the Standard and the Stellar version of this ship. Now, I have taken this ship, the Stellar Edition, and I have run it through several sets of, I guess you could call them tests. I'm not exactly the Mythbusters here, but took it out for combat, took it out for a Super Cruise overcharge run to see how far, how fast, and how the heat was. Also set it up for mining, stripped it down for exploration, and took a look at how it performed in all of them. So let's go ahead and dig in, shall we? One of the first things that you're going to notice about the Corsair is its looks. It is clearly a Gutamaya ship. Love it or hate it, it has that beaky look. I am not a massive fan. However, once you get in the cockpit, it does have that very nice carrier cockpit. Great visibility. You've got those rings in the cockpit to give you a little bit of definition to the glass. All in all, I do like the cockpit. It's very sleek. It's very futuristic looking. And it does the job very well, letting you know that this is a Gutamaya ship. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some numbers. So, as we said, the ship carries 6 hardpoints. I am pleased to note that unlike some of its Imperial brethren, their positioning on the ship makes weapon convergence spot on right in front of the ship. In terms of weapon testing, I had absolutely no issues with them. The guns hit where you're going to be aiming. It is absolutely fantastic. It's a big change from some of its brethren where those weapons were mounted out on the wing nacelles. It makes targeting a whole lot easier if you are using fixed guns and lasers. So absolutely no complaints there with the weapon placement. In terms of raw flight performance, with all pips to engines, it cruises right around 319. And if you boost, we're going to top out somewhere around 409, 410. Now, you could get this going a little bit faster with appropriate engineering, but baseline, it's not terrible. Not the fastest ship out there, but it is pretty speedy for having those Class 7 thrusters on it. Roll is pretty snappy. Yaw and pitch are where you're going to notice that this is a medium ship. It is not the fastest, even when we put it into the optimal zone. Was easily outturned by a Fer-de-Lance, which should be nothing new, but also did have a little bit of trouble in close quarters combat keeping up with a Federal gunship. So this is not a super agile light fighter. It is a medium ship, and it flies as such. Now, in terms of supercruise, we tested this ship over about 470,000 light seconds. The ship got up to 4,585 C, topped out at 57% heat, and it did pop the quarter of a tank danger warning right as we were arriving at target. It was a little wobbly, much like the Mandalay is, but certainly controllable, not like some of the older ships under supercruise overcharge. So it is fairly speedy and has fairly good fuel range on the provided tank. So supercruise overcharge, looking pretty good. Not as fast as the Cobra Mark V, but certainly respectable. Moving on, let's see how this ship fares in combat. Now, the loadout that comes on the Stellar Edition is not a bad set of guns. I'm going to tell you that I was able to get into combat and do just fine with it. You're not going to be routinely dropping the big boys without doing some engineering, but it is survivable on its own. Now, we also decided to play around and run a rather silly build where we put 3 railguns and 3 frag cannons on it. It was able to do very well with that. The Corsair did not start overheating until the 3rd or 4th consecutive shot of the railguns, and as you guys know, this kind of build, if your targeting is on point, can be pretty devastating. Was able to take out a Fer-de-Lance as well as a Federal gunship with it. So the Corsair is a perfectly capable combat ship. It would be better with some engineering on top of that. Just know that it's not going to hold its own in an incredibly tough dogfight with multiple opponents coming at it at once. I also tested this ship for mining. As you can imagine, the wide variety of optional internals as well as the 6 hardpoints gives you plenty of room to set up whatever mining configuration you might like. I was able to comfortably fit in a large refinery, a Class A prospector, and a collector limpet controller that could control up to 3 limpets. I opted to leave some defensive hardpoints on the ship, but was still able to easily get a subsurface displacement missile, abrasion blaster, and a mining laser on it with absolutely no problems. Service mining was an absolute breeze with it. Just park it off the target and let it go ahead and mine. Limpets did not seem to have too much trouble getting to the cargo hatch. I am used to them slamming into the bottom of my Federal Corvette, so that was something that was quite pleasing. So mining, this ship is very easy to convert, easy to fly. It is fairly maneuverable at slow speeds, so if you are going to do asteroid cracking, you shouldn't experience too much trouble there. Just keep in mind it does have those wide wings, so you might smack it off of different asteroid chunks once you crack one. But all in all, I would say that as a mining ship, it will be easy to convert and easy to use, probably pretty enjoyable. So how does this thing perform as a potential cargo hauler? Well, the base setup for the Stellar, which could be easily mimicked on the Standard, is to give you 2 64 capacity racks and a 32, which is 160 tons, which is not terrible, not fantastic. However, with a little judicious modification here, it is going to be possible to set this thing up for considerably more cargo. So by stripping everything but the 6-seat shield generator, we are able to set this ship up for 238 tons of cargo. Now, if we strip that shield generator itself, then that will allow us to add in 1 more cargo rack, and that will bring us up to 302 tons. Now, you could do this in any way you like, moving the shield generator down. So you're looking between 230 to 302 tons of cargo if you really want to make this a dedicated cargo ship, you can still retain your hard points to defend yourself, and you are going to have those fairly decent core internals, the 7A thrusters to get you out of trouble, and the frameshift drive SCO for Super Cruise overcharge. So it's not bad. It's not going to keep up with the Type 8, the Type 9, the big boys of hauling, but you can set this thing up to be a fairly decent medium cargo ship, and let's not forget that it does have the advantage of being able to land at smaller outposts with medium pads where the big boys cannot go. And lastly, testing out whether or not this ship will make a decent exploration ship. Now, a couple caveats here. I did not bother to strip this thing all the way down and do a bunch of lightweight engineering or anything. I did place a 5H Guardian frameshift drive booster in it, and I did fully engineer the FSD for extended range. However, I did not apply an experimental effect to it. That being said, once we did that and stripped out some of the unnecessary weight, we were able to come up with a maximum jump range for this thing of about 42.64 light years on laden. The current on it was 41.35. So it's not going to be blowing anybody away. It's certainly not going to keep up with a Jump Conda or a Mandalay, but you should be able to do some relatively lightweight exploring with 42 light years. Would I take it on a long expedition into the black? Absolutely not. That jump range is going to get you stranded. However, if you just want to dip your toe in and see what exploration is about, this ship should do an okay job of getting you started, but I would say that out of the roles that I tested in, it is absolutely the weakest as a potential explorer. So there you have it, guys. That is the brand new Gutamaya Corsair. I feel like it's going to be a pretty versatile combat ship, a pretty good cargo hauling ship, and potentially a pretty good mining ship. Exploration definitely seems to be its weak point. It has some deficiencies when it comes to turning compared to other ships, but overall, this is actually a pretty cool ship. I still don't like the looks, but it is a pretty solid effort. Now that we're done with all of the medium-sized ship, here's hoping that Frontier gets around to giving us a brand new large ship sometime this year. What do you guys think about the Corsair? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Consider becoming a channel member to really help me out if you enjoy the content. And if you're here to the end, watch time is key on YouTube, so thank you very much. My name is Dimebot. I'll see you next time, Commanders.